están todos? ¿Listos para un panel técnico pero divertido? We are going to talk about blockchain cross-pollination. And you probably ask, what the fuck is that? Yeah, they asked me, what is that? And why I bring this to the table is because Bitcoin, where everything starts, is the cross-pollination of different industries, right? Like math, economics, computer science. And for this talk, we have like a stellar people here, starting for John Light. He works at product in Sovereign. Dan O'Prey, co-founder of Hyperlayer and CPO at Backed. Alexei Zamyatin from Interlay, is the CEO of Interlay. And Sergio Demian Lerner, co-founder of IOV Labs. Then, welcome everyone. Then there is a phrase that says like Bitcoin is so complex, like has the game of theory that economists doesn't understand, computer science that engineer doesn't understand, and it's very complex, right? It's like the cross-pollination of different industry. And Dan, as a Bitcoin maximalist, maybe can tell us if it's really true that Bitcoin is the origin, what other areas has Bitcoin inspired? Dan, what do you think?
Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around until this late in the day. But yeah, I guess I'll skip over the obvious and say all the altcoins and all old chains, right, ultimately were initially inspired by Bitcoin. But I think a lot of the use cases people don't really necessarily know or appreciate. A lot started on Bitcoin in the early days and before moving on to other chains. So, you know, even things like NFTs, they started in the form of a project called colored coins on Bitcoin, which was essentially taking UTXOs and tagging them with some metadata to say they represent a different asset. And then you have projects like Counterparty, which were kind of like an L2 to allow people to issue different assets on top of Bitcoin. And ultimately, Bitcoin has decided actually to remove the functionality from Bitcoin that enabled some of those use cases. And that led for a lot of other blockchains to pick them up. Oop, bit of feedback. And then, you know, then there's also been technological advances that were originally designed for Bitcoin that have been adopted by other platforms as well, like, you know, SegWit and then ultimately Lightning were initially, you know, intended to be Bitcoin projects, and Litecoin picked those up and sort of ran with them slightly earlier than Bitcoin as well. And then outside of that, you mentioned, you know, Hyperledger. I think within the sort of enterprise blockchain or enterprise space, very much started similarly to Bitcoin architecturally and has evolved into something completely different. But it has given, you know, completely outside of even crypto, has given a lot of traditional financial institutions, enterprises and big companies the mandate and budget and attention to actually reinvest in some of their core older systems, you know, under the blockchain mandate as well. So I think that's been beneficial globally for us all as well.
I have a different question, going to the regulation, financial enterprise aspect to cryptography. We have here very technical people. Sergio, can you share your opinion about how cryptography, of course, is so important for the industry, and how one blockchain can benefit from the learnings from other blockchains in the cryptography space?
Well, there are plenty of examples of technology that were first, for instance, created in the Bitcoin forums in 2020, 2012, and then brought to life in Ethereum world. Like, for instance, there is this famous post from Gregory Maxwell in 2013, where he proposed coin witness as a way to scale, and that was basically rollups. Like 10 years later, we see rollups, and it's basically the same idea. So we see that ideas come and go. Sometimes you propose something in a post somewhere, and a couple of years later you see that this is really happening in some other blockchain. So there is a continuous feedback in the community And I think that, that this feedback makes exploration and research so fast. I was telling in a previous panel that in the last 5 years, the number of papers related to zero-knowledge proofs and SNARK and STARKs is exponentially more than the previous 20 years. And so we still are grasping the benefits of all this happening so fast. It's really hard to keep up with all these papers and conferences, presentations. It's really hard if you are in a research area in one blockchain company to be up to date on everything that's happening.
Yeah, thank you, Sergio. Any thoughts on cryptography, innovations between one blockchain to another, Bitcoin teaching or Bitcoin learning from other blockchains? John?
I do think it's great to see that the funding that has gone into the altcoin ecosystem, whether that's from speculators in public markets or like the VC funding that's going to the directly to the founding teams, is being put into open source cryptography, and that is actually being like hardened or battle tested in production to become something that maybe Bitcoin could someday implement either directly into Bitcoin Core or into some sort of system built around Bitcoin, like a layer 2 or a sidechain or something like that. For example, the cryptography that the ZeroSync team is using to build their chain state proof came from the Starkware ecosystem, and Starkware kind of got its initial seed funding from like Vitalik and the founders of Zcash and other people more like in the altcoin ecosystem. So vice versa, there are projects in altcoin land that borrow cryptography from Bitcoin researchers, like Bulletproofs originally started in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and then they've altcoin projects have adopted it, and altcoin projects use like libsec 56K1, and that's something that was originally developed for Bitcoin. So the open source technology is flowing both ways, and I think it's great that we can all kind of like work together to improve the state of the art of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think this is a good reason to keep working in open source, to take advantage of all the benefits. Same happened with Zcash and the Zcash Foundation, great cryptographer team. Nowadays, even one of the best cryptographer team is like BlockFire. Like, they have amazing cryptographers, and we all use this technology. But moving on, I was thinking to ask Alex, do you believe will be a new generation or a new groundbreaking application of blockchain technology thanks to cross-pollination, Alex?
So, I mean, there's always been this debate of like Bitcoin versus blockchain, and where do we put the blockchain in the industry to, unlock new use cases. My personal opinion is that like this technology is still primarily financial. That's what it was really created for, cash everywhere instantly. And Bitcoin solves parts of this. And however, I do think that we're still quite far away from global adoption and mass adoption. So we can use this every single day in our daily lives. And we see other ecosystems kind of moving in, offering maybe somewhat more centralized solutions. And they get adoption. I mean, the best example is Tron. Tron is being used every day now for stablecoin transfers. It's maybe not the most secure solution, but it works. And I do think that we can learn from this, right? And I think this cross-pollination can be very useful to kind of bring this thinking about products and what people actually want into the Bitcoin community, and also into people building on Bitcoin. And other exciting use, so apart from really, getting to mass adoption and being able to use BTC for payments, or having access to stable coins and being able to use both, and people not thinking about, oh, which wallet am I going to use, where do I store my keys, and really getting to the point that we have social sign-in, social recovery, and getting to a point where creating a Bitcoin account, Bitcoin wallet, is as simple as creating an email. I think this is basically where we need to go to, and there's been a lot of development on Ethereum and other ecosystems in that area where they really come up with technologies that allow you to, when you create an account, you have a backup in your Google Drive or iCloud, you know that it's secure, you don't need to worry about it. And I think this is exactly what we need to kind of figure out and how we can unite this technology and bring it to Bitcoin, because that's how we will get new use cases and mass adoption. And one of the interesting things that can come from this is the use of Bitcoin and this technology in social media. I initially got started with Namecoin, actually, and I think, the idea was brilliant. Unfortunately, it was too early for its time, but now we see more and more social networks decentralizing, and I think that's a very interesting use case that hopefully will be unlocked over the next couple of years.
Sergio, IOV Labs Rootstock is like one perfect example of this, right? It's a Bitcoin sidechain, but it's an EVM machine, and it's in Java, if I recall correct. But what are the challenges that you live every day in RSK or IOV Labs to getting this blockchain adoption in Argentina, worldwide? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I have to now split my personality between the tech guy and what I think is really needed. And what I think is needed is very similar to what Alexei says. To get massive adoption, essentially, Argentinians mostly use blockchain to transact in stablecoins because either they are not ready to own Bitcoin or they need just for payments or for small savings. So for massive adoption, we need to be closer to the user and get the technology to self-custody with social recovery and a lot of means for them to control their seeds and protect their seeds. That's what is needed really to get massive adoption. And in the position that I am as a tech guy, as a researcher, I see the other part, how can we scale DVM so when the moment to be massive comes, we are ready. So in that sense, there is a lot of research we did in the past years, for instance, replacing standard databases, key value databases with other types of databases like flat databases, which are much more efficient to handle the state, which continually grows. This is something we did. Also regarding the data structures inside a node, how to handle them more efficiently, because at the end of the day, these are all constant factors that improve the blockchain, but we can do 10 times more just by improving the efficiency of the node. So yes, we have the growth side relating to make the technologies easier, and the technology side, which is scaling and privacy, which is another topic that is very, very important. If we want this to be massive, we need to protect people's privacy.
With CBDCs coming soon, I think we need more privacy than ever, right? It feels like we are going to lose in Latin America all our privacy. Governments are going to know how. I think it was Karsten who said, now we are going to know what every person spends, where and how, right? It's like they want control. Do you have any examples that can show how Bitcoin is moving to more privacy or how cryptography is being used for more pro-privacy use cases, John?
Sure. Well, in Bitcoin today, a lot of the practical hands-on kind of privacy work is basically around, two layers. One is CoinJoin and CoinSwap, which was a project that got some funding over the past couple of years. And then there's also additional work looking at privacy at layer 2, so there's state chains is looking at implementing a blinded state chain kind of protocol, and people are constantly looking at ways to improve privacy on Lightning. The fact that you're just moving transactions off chain already is taking a lot of data out of public view, but then the question is, can we even continue to protect user privacy from the nodes that they're connected to on the Lightning network? So that's where a lot of the kind of like real world privacy development and research is in Bitcoin. But then there's some of the more theoretical or future looking kind of research, some of which is original, some of which is borrowing from altcoin ecosystems, like looking at Zcash style shielded transactions so that we can have like end-to-end encrypted payments for Bitcoin using zero-knowledge proofs. There's the work that Rob and Linus and the Zero Sync team published around ZK coins, which is using a client-side verification protocol in combination with Zcash style shielded transactions built on top of Bitcoin. There's the validity rollups work that's happening right now. So yeah, I think that people are kind of approaching this problem from a number of different angles. A lot of the research, though, does seem to be converging on these kind of zero-knowledge based privacy protocols. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention the whole like eCash resurgence that's happening with like Cashew and Fedimint, which is still a kind of custodial model working within Bitcoin's existing capabilities, but it's adding a much greater level of privacy than you can get with using Bitcoin on-chain or even with Lightning today. So, like I said, people are kind of approaching this from a number of different angles. I think it's good that users ultimately have the options so they can choose the trade-offs of security or privacy or usability that they're kind of most comfortable with. And ultimately, I would really love to see trustless, zero-knowledge privacy brought directly to Bitcoin. That's going to require a soft fork, but I think the more that this kind of zero-knowledge cryptography proves itself in production on other blockchains, and we're able to see how those experiments play out, I think the more likely it is that this technology eventually is seen as secure and robust and something that we can bring directly into the Bitcoin protocol.
Yeah, agree.
Dulce, sorry to interrupt. There is a very recent event. I think it's super interesting to highlight the surprise that BitBM appeared, and suddenly we have multi-party computation, which was something related to custody of then we have right there embedded in Bitcoin script. I think this is marvelous. This is just a new technology being put to the service to a lot of kind of solutions, and this shows that even with the restrictions that Bitcoin script have, you can do this marvelous thing like putting restrictions based on arbitrary computation on Bitcoin scripts. And I think there will be in the upcoming month a lot of applications related to BitBM.
I have a question for Alexei. It sounds like John is saying like, yeah, we go and test in production in other blockchains and then we do it better in Bitcoin. I'm going to put some spicy. Do you think it's like we really are doing this with altcoins on other blockchains, like testing in other blockchains, and then just take the best to put it in Bitcoin? What is your opinion on that, Alexei?
I mean, that's definitely a spicy question. I think so there's two sides to this. On one hand, if you look at the researchers that have been working on Bitcoin for years, but then moved on, especially in academia, moved on to Ethereum and other platforms because of the limitations of Bitcoin and also the somewhat restrictive views of the community, they're coming back now. As of funny enough, this is because of ordinals, because ordinals brought in this renaissance into the community, and suddenly you see BitVM, new bridge technology, a lot of things, people are paying attention again. So from that perspective, you could say, well, yes, they went to do something else and then they come back to Bitcoin. I mean, me including, right? I worked on Bitcoin, I worked on others, and now I'm back on Bitcoin. Now, from adoption perspective, I think it's unfair to say that. And the reason is that people don't really, I think there's a lot of problems in this world, and people who have other problems than, decentralization, they don't care that much. They don't have the luxury to care if it's proof of work, if it's proof of stake. They want to use it. They need access to financial systems. They need access to stable coins. And other systems have provided this, and it wasn't Bitcoin. And I think it would be unfair to say, well, Ethereum or Tron or these are testnet to Bitcoin, because They achieved adoption. They help people day to day, even if they're not as decentralized, and they also enable some illicit use cases. So, they also have legitimacy. They also add value. And I think that's something that the Bitcoin community has started to realize. I mean, ordinals are the best example of this. And by kind of realizing, well, okay, there is value in other approaches. We can learn from this. I think that's the way to go. So I would say no. I would not consider everything else a testnet for Bitcoin. They have grown and shown adoption way too much for this.
Yeah, I know Dan is a little bit Bitcoiner on the Bitcoin side. Do you want to take on this?
I'll take the
please?
other side just to keep the spiciness going. But yeah, and I'd say like people had value in Terra and Luna for a while until they didn't, and had value in FTX and FTT coin until they didn't, and Celsius coin until they didn't. And while Tron is cheap and fast, it's cheap and fast because it's highly centralized. And that is why it's cheap and fast, and that's how it can be cheap and fast. And people don't care about decentralization until they do. They don't care about security until they have to. And a lot of these systems haven't been fully, even Bitcoin hasn't been fully tested yet, right? The regulators across the world are going to come after, and are right now coming after, a lot of actors and a lot of projects within the space. And governments are going to coordinate and try to shut down some of these projects. So if you own a stablecoin on Tron, what you own is a promise from some company somewhere with a bank, holding dollars in a bank somewhere, run on a platform run by a company somewhere. That's a lot of single points of failure, and I personally wouldn't hold that for too long. Maybe it's good transactionally. But ultimately, my personal belief is that, like the internet, there is one internet, and things will be built in layers with different protocols building on top of that. And Bitcoin is slow and conservative, and as you say, like very limited and restricted, by design. But ultimately, these types of use cases will be enabled on multiple different layers on top of Bitcoin, just like they are with various internet protocols.
Thank you. Sergio, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I will add that the widespread opinion and mentality towards Bitcoin sidechains has changed in the last years. I think there's now more idea that a multi-layer Bitcoin with Lightning, but with other ideas, Fedmins or space chains, and essentially side chains and roll-ups is something that is coming. Like, it can take 1, 2, 3, but it's coming. And better we give the best support from the Bitcoin side, because all these Bitcoin center and Bitcoin aligned sidechains and ideas are quite different from the other blockchains. Like, they don't compete with Bitcoin in store of value, they don't compete with Bitcoin in money. And they can bring these experiments, as you say, into Bitcoin. So I think that there is a change in the mentality, and we will see the benefits of this in the upcoming years.
Okay, final thoughts on John and Alexei to close this talk? Short thoughts, please. We have a few minutes only.
Well, I think like one of the questions we wanted to discuss as well is like, what can we learn from other industries? And I came upon this post very recently, and I want to quote it. Imagine the medical industry would present their products in a way that the crypto industry does, like the Bitcoin industry does. They would talk about some chemical reactions in your body, and instead of saying painkiller. And I think this is something we can learn from. When we tell people about Bitcoin and what it can do, we get into details of like, proof of work and like mining, and you use your keys non-custodial, and people are like, so what? Like, what does this even mean? So I think we really need to, as Sergio mentioned, we need to go to the user and we need to understand, okay, what are their problems, what do they want, and make this whole technology approachable, rather than sitting focusing on technology. And this is a lesson learned also from academia, where you think about tech and papers, and then you realize nobody cares in practice.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We have to close this for time, but we will keep learning about other industries. We will see new experiments, innovation in Bitcoin and in blockchain and sidechain and cryptography, Frost, and probably we will talk about it next year in LabitConf. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.